Okay.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Jacob. This is my dad. So Devilman Crybaby came out, I think, like the first week of January 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And people are already saying it's like one of the best anime of the year, which I don't know, seems a little premature, but yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But you watched the
Yeah,
entire
I watched
thing.
the entire thing.
Yeah.
He's read the manga, the original manga, and watched like the first episode and like the last 4 episodes.
Well, let me say that I'm in this conversation as the authority of the animes before this, because I don't have perfect knowledge of them, but I have watched every episode of the original show. I tried to watch the female Devilman show. Wasn't to my taste. It was I thought, rather poorly done and much too grim and serious. So I at least watched like 7 or 8 episodes of that show, and I've read the original manga and many of the sequels of the manga. So that's where I come into it.
Mm-hmm. And so I've really only seen this. I read like 1 chapter of the original manga, and I wasn't like, I wasn't wowed or anything. Go Nagai is one of those people who draws in a very old school style.
Very cartoony.
One of the reasons why mangaka has so much trouble drawing and like getting sleep while making their deadlines is because they draw in a much more detailed style than what the system used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And Go Nagai was one of those people who was probably just churning out pages.
Oh yeah, he had to draw a lot of pages. Of course, Japanese artists do use assistants quite often.
Yeah.
And the big artists with the detailed styles a lot of times use a lot of assistants.
Mm-hmm.
But Go Nagai is a very interesting character who I'm very much into. He's kind of like the Jack Kirby of Japanese comics, because I don't know how many people are familiar with this, but his first strip was considered one of the first high school dirty humor comedy comics and pushed it to extremes. And then he has the original horror strip, Devilman, that pushed that to extremes, and the giant robot strip that pushed Giant Robot to extremes was Mazinger Z, and the adults only comic which pushed that to extremes was Keiko Kamen. And practically everything he's ever done has taken an existing genre and pushed it to extremes.
Yeah. And like, we have series like Evangelion and Berserk, where the people who made those series read this when they were like teenagers, and like they read Devilman and like, I want to do something like that.
Exactly.
And then they did. And there's actually a pretty big parallel between the Evangelion ending and the Devilman ending.
Yeah. We should mention too that, Jacob, you've also saw the live action movie before you saw it.
I did.
Which I give a thumbs up to. I think it's a pretty good movie. It's not perfect.
Yeah. It has a pretty good ending fight scene in it.
Yeah.
Especially as far as live action anime movies go. It's not as bad as it could have been.
And it has a pretty serious plot. Pretty good plot too. So I kind of like that movie. But it needed more Devilman and more monsters, I think. Would have made me happier.
I was like, so finally we're going to be talking about this thing. We're definitely going to be going into spoiler territory here.
Spoilers.
So if you haven't watched it yet, I think you probably should.
But I mean, a lot of people, if you know something about manga and anime, a lot of people know that the original Devilman story had an unhappy ending.
Yeah.
A lot of people already know that, because that's been out there for a long time. And the live action movie has an unhappy ending.
Yeah.
That's right like the original story.
And I was honestly surprised, because I thought that was like just some non-canonical ending that they made for the live action movie, because, live action anime movies tend to not be that good. So
yeah,
I was assuming that it was just wrong, and then it turns out it was actually the correct ending.
Yeah, and I hadn't yet read the comic when I saw that movie, and I didn't know if that was the correct ending either. But you have to admit that the Devilman ending is one of the most melodramatic ways to lose you could possibly do. I mean, it's very dramatic. They don't just lose; they lose bad.
Yeah, I mean, like. I was told when I went in that the 8th, 9th, and 10th episodes, you're just going to watch all of them back to back, because there's no way you're going to be able to stop from watching them. So the 9th episode ends, and I see that the people who are angry at the Devilman have like killed all of the supporting human cast, and have like cut them up and have put like their heads on pikes.
Yes,
and they're like waving them around.
And that's even more disturbing in the original comic, by the way. That's even watered down from the original comic, which is super disturbing, because including a sympathetic little kid and a sympathetic teenage girl in the supporting cast, and they get murdered by a mob of humans that's just mob violence.
Not even by the demons.
Not by the demons, no, by the mob violence that's a reaction to the demons. But at that point, the demons had already destroyed much of the planet. So I mean, it's like, it's not just that Devilman loses and dies at the end of his story. It's that the whole world is effed up completely.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, the Devilman fights like Satan, and then Devilman dies because, you know, he fought Satan.
And he loses. You don't expect him to lose.
Yeah, you don't expect him to lose. It's not something that I expected to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I saw the ending before, and I thought it was wrong.
It's very Go Nagai.
Yeah.
It's he loved to hit you in the face with things that you did not expect, and that's. It's almost like he sat down and thought, now what is the ending that you least expect, you know?
Yeah.
So I mean, his plan from the beginning was like, I'm going to create a hero to fight against demons who will take over the world, and who will lose badly and die, and then the world will be taken over. That was his plan from the beginning, and that's kind of a very subversive, revolutionary, trolling the audience sort of plan, when you think about it.
Yeah, you know, you can tell that there's a lot of like sign-in series that have been trying to copy stuff like this, unsuccessfully, by the way, because this came out in like what, Devilman came out in what, the 70s?
Yeah, well, possibly, the viewers can look up the exact date, but possibly even the 60s or the early 70s.
Pretty sure it was the 70s.
If you figure that the animated show, the original show, lagged behind the manga by a year or two, which is reasonable, I think the animated show is a very early anime. It's a step above Speed Racer, but it's right about the level of like the first couple of series of Gundam. Yeah. So it's very, you can almost date it by that, and that says to me early 70s. Yeah. You know. So I'm saying the manga may have even started in the late 60s, but it was definitely well on its way by the early 70s.
So this series is like 40 years old, and I've never seen a twist like that in an anime, like ever.
And it's only like a 5-volume manga.
Yeah, it's only like 5 volumes, not even that long.
Yeah, it's not that long.
Which sort of is what helps to make it a 10-episode series.
Yeah.
Netflix made it 10 episodes. They did a lot of, they added some stuff that generally makes it better. It's not set in the 70s run thing. It's set in the present day, so people have cell phones and stuff like that. They have, there are, these rapper characters. All the side characters seem to have more plot surrounded.
Yeah.
About them. There's more plot with them, which is nice. It actually makes you care more about the characters.
Well, and they keep the character of his opponent, his blonde friend, who turns out to be his opponent, very true to the comic, which is good. And the beginning is very true to the comic, and the ending is very true to the comic. And then in between, there's some, small alterations made. Yeah. But the beginning with the club and the demons and the big fight in the club is very true to the comic. That's exactly what happens.
It's got this really weird psychosexual thing about it, where it's it's very sexual and it's also very violent.
Well, and that's from Go Nagai's original artwork, and they didn't really tone that down any. If you see a sexy woman on the disco dance floor and suddenly her clothes get torn off and she starts mutating, and then her breasts turn into giant mouths with sharp teeth that bite the heads off someone, you think, wow, that's some pervert animators. But they're actually just taking that and moderately toning it down from the original artwork. Yeah. Because Go Nagai loved to do things like that. He loved to put mouths and eyeballs instead of nipples on breasts, or have wings sprouting out of weird places, or vaginas even that turn into giant mouths and then bite you in half. Yeah. Freud would have a field day with Go Nagai's guy's artwork. He would, if Freud would retire and spend the rest of his life writing about this if he had seen it in his day.
Yeah.
Because Go Nagai, I totally respect about him. He puts it all out there on the paper, just deep from the subconscious. He's almost like Robert Crumb in that sense. More commercial than Crumb, of course, but.
And the animator, so the guy who did the direction, who directed this series, I can't remember his name for the life of me, but he directed Ping Pong the Animation, which is known as one of...
I'm totally unfamiliar with that.
Ping Pong the Animation is about... it's a sports anime about ping pong.
That sounds wild.
Yeah. The guy is real strange, and he makes some real interesting art. People will generally put Ping Pong the Animation in the top 5 sports anime. It's real, everything this dude does is interesting. It all has a real interesting art style, which is this series in a nutshell. They have there's this thing where it's whenever Devilman's running really fast, he's parallel to the ground, and his arms are waving like this while he's running.
Like a cross between a dog and a swimmer.
Yeah, it doesn't. It looks real weird, but
But he's a semi-demonic character, so it kind of fits, even though that's totally not from the comic.
Yeah.
That's just, like you said, from the animator's imagination.
And there's there's these moments where it's at one point it'll be really poor animation, at one point it'll be really high quality animation. There's one moment where this character's walking and saying something, and it's literally just a stick figure. The character's on a stick, and they just have him going up and down like this while he's walking.
Well, this, anime is notorious for those shortcuts, and they quite usually hide them very well.
It's this guy's not even attempting to hide them though. It's just this is where I will do the bad animation. And you're going to know it's bad.
Well, that scene was probably uninteresting to him. Some directors are like that. If they're not interested in a scene, they kind of just shortchange it a little. But usually not the best ones do it that. But that's anime too, though. I mean, anime has to use a certain amount of still pictures and stuff to meet its budget, I think. It's part of the style.
It's just weird. It's got this, it's just got a kind of weird artistic style.
Yeah.
They made all of the characters relay runners, in high school.
That's an interesting take, yeah. And I think that's made up for the anime.
That is made up for the anime.
I don't remember for sure on that.
It's weird because now they have now they use all these relay runner references. So they'll use that to show something in the anime. It's really interesting that they added that specifically so that they could make the characters have a little bit more depth to them.
Yeah, and I think it works very well. I kind of liked the way it played out in the end there.
Because I think a common complaint is that they have a common complaint that you would get about this manga is that some of the side characters don't have a lot of depth to them.
Yeah.
Because clearly as someone who would be reading this 40 years after it came out, would have different standards of what's a good manga than what was a good manga in the 70s.
Well, and also the original comic, the supporting characters really aren't well worked out in either, because what Nagai does is that the talky parts of the original comic are all this deep philosophical conversation between the person that will be Devilman and the person that will be Satan. And so there's a lot of deep philosophical conversation in the early chapters that has nothing to do with the fleshing out anybody's character. And then from there he pretty much jumps straight into nonstop action and violence. And so he doesn't give himself a lot of room to flesh out any of the supporting characters, except to say, here's the teenage girl and here's a cute boy and here's their mom and dad. They're sort of presented as that way in the comic as well. So that's not like they're shortchanging the characters, really, I wouldn't say.
And they also made Devilman cry a lot more. I haven't read the whole manga.
Yeah,
but,
I don't think tears were a big part of the original comic. Although I think he may have shed some tears of rage when he saw what happened to his supporting characters.
Yeah, it's
at the end. But.
Every time something emotional happens, you can see this dude crying in like the most manly way possible.
Yeah, they worked that in as a theme.
Yeah.
But it definitely wasn't a theme in the comic. But it works. I won't say it doesn't work.
You know, as literally anyone will catch me saying, I am completely down for changing things for adaptations, because sometimes when you adapt something, you just realize that the original source material doesn't work the way you want it to.
Well, right. You know, to me it's like Nigel Bruce playing Dr. Watson in the old Sherlock Holmes movies. He wasn't anything like the stories, and adds a whole different element of comedy and lightness to the story that is actually much appreciated. You know, so sometimes these changes make the thing work better for a movie or a TV show.
There's been a lot of progress in manga since the since that mangas came out. I mean, this is the end of the Astro Boy era. We haven't even gotten to things like Fist of the North Star yet.
Yeah, although I will say that if this series was going to really be true to the manga, it would have to add like 3 episodes of non-stop violence. Because what this series shortchanges is all the chapters of the original manga where it's the Devilman isn't even in it, where it's military forces fighting against demons, and he has chapter after chapter of demons just tearing the crap out of planes and tanks and blowing things up and destroying buildings, and you see all this carnage of cities burning. And so they've actually, as violent as this show is, they've actually deleted like 2 or 3 they would need several episodes more worth of demons fighting the military and burning down cities in order to be as violent as the original comic. But I'm sure they did that to focus on the characters that they had and not take you into this larger abstract picture of the World War that Nagai seems to really relish drawing. Scene after scene after scene of destructive battles between humanity and demons.
Well, Go Nagai said that this was like an anti-war manga. So
for an anti-war guy, he sure loves drawing war.
So it's like I want to really get into all the pointless death that's going to happen. But it's like, for an anime series, you got to be a little bit more like.
I have to
stick a little bit more to the point, I guess.
I have to question him saying that, though, honestly, because I'm not sure if he's sincere when he says something like that. Because when you draw it, when you look at the drawings, he has so much fun drawing death and destruction, and he goes on and on and on with the death and destruction. And I think when you've gleefully drawn that much death and destruction, then I think you kind of have to say it's an anti-war comic.
Yeah.
Otherwise you just look like a total insane person that just, loves war. So I think you kind of have to say that, but I think when you look at this comic strip, I would say that I've never seen death and destruction done in such a gleeful, fun comic book style that really makes it exciting and fun. When you read war comics like Sergeant Rock back in the days, or Sergeant Fury, I mean, a lot of those comics were drawn by World War II veterans, and they always portrayed the battle as being very realistic, and they didn't put that sort of superhero, emphasis to it that Nagai does, where it's like bringing superhero aesthetics to a military battle, and making it really fun. And Sergeant Rock had battles, but they weren't fun the way the battles between the demons and the armies of the world are. They are just gleefully depicted as fun comic book pages. So I kind of think, I don't want to go on and on, but I kind of think Go Nagai felt like he had to say that.
Yeah.
Or may have just said that sarcastically, sort of tongue-in-cheek, like it's an anti-war comic. So we have to take that with a little grain of salt.
One thing that we can say about this is, since this has made a lot of money, Netflix knows that this is popular. This gives us the chance of getting like a Mazinger Z anime that follows the actual plot of the Mazinger Z.
Exactly, which would be great, because the original series again was so early. It's above Speed Racer, but probably below the quality of the first Gundam series. If you can picture that, you old anime fans. So yeah, it would be so great. And plus, what they didn't show in the original Mazinger Z series, which I've watched like the first 20 episodes of, And the difference between the comic and the original Mazinger Z is in the comic the robot goes nuts and destroys half the city before they learn how to control it, because the guy in it doesn't know how to control it. And it's just more gleeful destruction from Go Nagai, which they totally leave out of the animated series, but it would be great if they did that. The original series is full of strange things. Like there's a villain with the comic series. There's a villain who's just a head of a Nazi, like on a flying disc plate. I swear to God, this is one of the villains that is controlling the evil robots, is the head of a Nazi. So there's just some very strange villains that are controlling the robots. And there's of course the half man, half woman.
Yeah.
You know, one of the continuing Mazinger Z villains was a sub-villain, a sub-chief, who was female on one side and male on the other side, and wore like a cult sacrifice, human sacrifice type robe, but she was half male and half female, like the ultimate transphobic character. And talked in a female voice part of the time and a male voice part of the time in the original cartoon.
Huh.
So. But that's just one of those things where it's like, huh, you just go, Japan.
Anyways, I would say that you should definitely watch it if you haven't already.
The Devilman, the new series.
Yeah, the new series.
What is it called? Devilman
Crybaby.
Devilman Crybaby, yeah. I didn't watch all the in-between episodes. I watched the beginning, and then I watched like 3 or 4 at the end. But it looked really good. Yeah, and if you haven't seen Devilman before or read the comic, you should do both, because you can read the comic online. Yeah. That's what I did.
It's on Netflix.
And it's yeah, and it's on Netflix. So
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, go watch it. I give it I'd say 4 out of 4 stars.
4 out of 4. I'd say 4 out of 4 stars. That's probably about the best thing I watched so far this year, even though I've only watched like 3 things.
And if you haven't watched it, the spoilers that we've given you are not all the spoilers. You'll still be shocked by plenty of stuff.
Yeah.
So don't let that ruin it.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.